Hey guys, my name is Kaylin, and I work for the Papio-Missouri River NRD. An important part of our job at the Papio-Missouri River NRD is to protect, manage, and enhance our state's natural resources. Water especially is a big part of what we do at the NRD every day. It's also one of the building blocks of life, and arguably the most important natural resource on Earth. Every living organism relies on water to live. Today we are going to focus on watersheds. We can't cover watersheds without first discussing surface and groundwater. Surface water is any body of water above ground. Can you think of any examples? It could be something as small as a trickling stream, all the way up to a massive ocean. Rivers, lakes, creeks, ponds, wetlands, reservoirs, and seas are all examples of surface water found on Earth. Since surface water is easier to get to than groundwater, it's relied on for several human uses. In Nebraska, we get the majority of our drinking water from the ground, but 84% of the United States relies on surface water. Groundwater is the opposite. It's water held underground in the spaces and pores of soil, sand, and rock, and it's not visible. For a quick refresher on groundwater, check out our video on YouTube. Now that we've cleared that up, let's talk about watersheds. A watershed is an area of land, both above and below ground, that drains to a common point, called an outlet. Think of a watershed like a shower. The shower head can spray anywhere within the shower, on the walls, on the floor, or even on you. But all the water exits the shower through one spot, the drain. So in this scenario, the shower head is like precipitation falling into the watershed, and the drain is the outlet, or the low point of a watershed. Watersheds can be as small as a footprint, or can be a massive expanse of land, depending on the lay of the land or what is called topography. The border of a watershed is called the drainage divide, and is the highest ridge that divides whether rain falls into its own basin or a neighboring one. The area of a watershed is also defined by the common source of water it flows into or the outlet. Let's see an example. This is Tony. Tony lives in Blair, Nebraska, just north of Omaha. Like everyone on Earth, Tony lives in a watershed. That watershed, along with nearby watersheds, make up an even larger watershed, that make up an even larger watershed, eventually turning into a massive watershed called a region. In the United States, we have 12 major water regions. Tony's region is the Missouri, the largest of all the water regions in the U.S., taking up all or part of 10 different states.
12 inches in one day left scenes of washed out roads for miles around.
Sometimes too much of a good thing can be bad, and that works for water too. Eastern Nebraska, especially the Omaha metro, has a long history of flooding, only made worse as it grows. Just take a look at the green area of this map. This was the size of Omaha in 1955. Now, less than 75 years later, we have more than tripled in size. Man-made surfaces like roofs and concrete are non-porous or impermeable, meaning they don't allow water to pass through. Imagine the last time you took a ride through town. Think of all the streets and houses you pass on your way. So instead of water soaking in and becoming groundwater or sucked up by plants, precipitation runs off mainly as surface water. So where does the water go then? Usually, water is directed into our stormwater drainage systems, designed for that very purpose. From there, you might think it's cleaned of pollutants, treated for drinking water, and sent back on its journey. But actually, those stormwater drains dump directly into our area creeks, rivers, and lakes. That's bad for both flooding and pollution. If there's more water than the system can support, homes, businesses, and lives can be at risk. Pollution makes it even worse. As more water chokes our waterways, causing erosion, and picking up and depositing harmful pollutants along the way. Typically, pollution is separated into two types: point source pollution or non-point source pollution. Point source pollution is a single, easily identifiable source of pollution, such as a pipe draining into a lake from an industrial plant. It's easy to remember. You can point to the source of the pollutants. On the other hand, non-point source pollution is from a collection of sources that often compile at one time and cannot be traced back to a single location. This is often referred to as society's pollution. An example of this might be rainfall moving over an area of land, picking up excess fertilizers from a cornfield, or drops of oil from a leaky vehicle. All of this runoff is carried away and deposits into our local lakes, rivers, and wetlands. Can you think of additional sources of non-point source pollution in your community? Whether you live in an urban or rural environment, there are plenty of sources. In an urban environment, you might find the following: excess fertilizers in our yards or golf courses, motor oil in the roads, salts on the road from snowplows, dog waste, exposed dirt at a construction site, or even removal of trees. In a rural environment, you will often find herbicides, pesticides, or fertilizers, along with livestock waste and exposed topsoil as your primary pollution sources. Several organizations work to limit point source pollution through strict regulations, often enforced with technology-based controls, or water quality testing at the location of discharge. Thus, point source pollution is easier to identify and address. However, non-point source pollution, coming from several, often unidentifiable sources, proves to be a very difficult task. Just as humans depend on water, wildlife does too. Whether it's fish, frogs, white-tailed deer, a bobcat, or any species of bird, they all rely on fresh, clean water to survive. Pollution of our surface water or flooding in our watersheds can sicken animals or destroy habitats. Fortunately, some animals can move away from these dangers, like birds, for example, that can migrate to a new location. Other animals, especially aquatic species like fish and amphibians, are not so lucky and can often become very sick or die from polluted bodies of water, as they can't escape the problem. We may not think of it as pollution, but even erosion or soil being washed away into our water sources can cause the water to cloud up, potentially killing off critical aquatic plant habitat. Thankfully, the Papio-NRD and other valuable partners like Nebraska Natural Resources Commission, the DNR, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the NRCS are fighting for a solution. Through projects like reservoirs, flood control structures, and water quality projects, the Papio-NRD is finding innovative ways to keep people and property safe today and into the future. There are simple things you can do to limit the amount of non-point source pollution in our water. Remember to never put any chemicals, medicines, or trash down storm drains or in waterways. Pick up your dog's waste regularly. Rake your leaves and pick up litter to keep these items out of storm drains. Encourage your parents to read directions before applying chemicals or fertilizers to lawns. Oftentimes, people use more than necessary, and the ground can't absorb it. Lastly, plant flowers, grasses, and trees in your yard. The less exposed soil in your yard, the less chance of erosion. Thanks for joining us as we discovered more about watersheds. For more information about the Papio-Missouri River NRD or your local water resources, you can find us on all the social media platforms or by checking out our website at www.papionrd.org.